Welcome to The Explainer. So, have you ever really stopped to think about what a tiny little daisy and a giant oak tree actually have in common? Well, today, we're doing just that. We're going to take a guided tour of the amazing world of flowering plants. We're going to break down their hidden blueprint, starting from the roots deep in the earth, all the way up to those beautiful flowers reaching for the sun.
So let's start with that big question right there. Think about it. How can plants that look so wildly different, a delicate rose, a simple blade of grass, a massive oak tree, how can they all belong to the same basic family? Well, the answer, as we're about to see, is that they all share a kind of architectural plan, a common blueprint that connects every single one of them.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll look at the two worlds every plant lives in. Then we'll dig into the roots. After that, we'll reach for the sky with the stem and leaves, check out the flower, understand the fruit, and finally, we'll learn how botanists decode the whole blueprint. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive right in. To really get a handle on any flowering plant, you have to picture it living in two totally separate worlds at the same time. Yep, one world happening below the ground and a completely different one happening above it.
And this is that fundamental split. Down below, you've got the root system. Its job is to be the anchor, holding the plant steady against wind and rain. But it's also like this massive network of tiny straws, constantly sucking up water and nutrients from the soil. Then, above ground, you've got the shoot system. And this is all the stuff we actually see. The stem holding everything up, the leaves acting like little solar panels, and of course the flowers and fruits that are all about creating the next generation.
Okay, so let's dig a little deeper now, and I mean that quite literally. We're starting with the plant's foundation, the root system. This is the hidden half of the plant, but it is absolutely crucial for survival.
Roots basically come in two main flavors, and I guarantee you've seen both of them. Over on the left, we have the taproot system. This is where you have one big main root that goes straight down. Think of a carrot or a stubborn dandelion you're trying to pull out of the yard. And on the right, you've got the fibrous root system, which is more like a tangled mat of thin roots, kind of like what you find on a clump of grass. Now, this isn't just a random difference. It's a huge clue that helps us figure out what kind of plant we're looking at.
And that brings us to these two really important and, kind of long words, dicotyledonous and monocotyledonous. But don't worry, we can just call them dicots and monocots. These are basically the two great families of all flowering plants. That cot part just refers to the first little leaf inside the seed. Monocots have one, dicots have two. And here's the rule of thumb. Dicots, like your roses and sunflowers, usually have taproots. Monocots, like grass, corn, and lilies, have fibrous roots. It's a simple difference that tells us so much as we move up the plant.
Now, here's where it gets really cool. Roots aren't just for anchoring and drinking. Some plants have cleverly modified their taproots to become underground pantries for storing food. Just think about carrots or radishes or beets. Anytime you eat one of those, you're literally eating a specialized, super nutritious root that the plant uses to save up energy. All right, so we've explored that hidden world underground. Now let's move on up into the sunlight and see how the plant builds its world up high with its stem and leaves.
The stem is basically the plant's main highway. It's built with nodes. Think of these as the exits where leaves and branches pop out, and internodes, which are the long stretches of highway in between. The stem gives the whole plant support, holding the leaves up to the sun, and it's positively phototropic, which is just a fancy way of saying it actively grows towards the light. Like that plant on your windowsill that's always leaning towards the window.
And sprouting out from those nodes are the plant's solar panels, the leaves. These things are little green powerhouses, perfectly designed for one thing, photosynthesis, that incredible process of turning sunlight into food.
But here's the thing. Even though all leaves are basically solar panels, they come in this incredible variety of designs. As you can see, they vary in shape and size, the edge or margin, is it smooth or is it spiky, and even how deeply the leaf blade is cut. And this variety isn't just for looks. It's all about adapting to different environments. A pine needle, for example, is just a leaf that's adapted to save water in the cold, while a giant tropical leaf is designed to catch every last bit of sun in a crowded rainforest.
And now we get to what's often the most stunning part of the plant, the flower. A flower is basically a modified shoot, brilliantly engineered for one main purpose, reproduction. It's the plant's big reproductive showcase.
Flowers don't just appear randomly on a stem. The specific way they're arranged is called an inflorescence. A perfect example is a sunflower. That big head isn't one giant flower. No way. It's actually a super complex cluster of hundreds of tiny little flowers, all arranged in a very specific pattern. That whole head is the inflorescence.
So a standard flower is organized in 4 layers, or whorls, kind of like those Russian nesting dolls. On the very outside, you've got the sepals. These are usually green, and they protect the bud before it opens. Move 1 layer in, and you get the petals, which are often bright and colorful to attract pollinators like bees. Go another layer deeper, and you find the stamens. Those are the male parts that make all the pollen. And right in the very center, you have the carpels, the female parts that are going to eventually become the fruit.
Okay, so what happens after the flower has done its job and been pollinated? Well, let's move on to the next chapter in the plant's life, which is all about making sure there's a next generation. This, right here, is the magic trick, the whole point of the flower. Once fertilization happens, this incredible transformation starts. The ovary, which is at the base of that female carpel, starts to swell and ripen and turns into the fruit. And inside that growing fruit, the fertilized ovules become the seeds.
And that brings us to the seed itself, the final product. Every single seed is like a tiny, self-contained survival pod. It holds a little baby plant and a packed lunch to get it started. And hey, remember our old friends, the monocots and dicots? That whole distinction starts right here, inside the seed. And just like everything else in the plant world, seeds come in all shapes and sizes, and vary a lot in how long they can survive before they finally sprout.
So finally, with all this mind-boggling diversity out there, how in the world do scientists describe and classify all these plants in a way that makes sense? Well, they've developed a kind of secret code.
Part of that code is called the floral formula. You can think of it like a chemical formula, but for a flower. It uses symbols and numbers to give you a quick, shorthand summary of what the flower's structure is. So, a simple formula might tell a botanist at a single glance that a flower has 5 sepals, 5 petals, and 10 stamens. It's a really powerful way to describe a flower's key features.
And to really visualize that formula, botanists use a floral diagram. This is the blueprint. It's like a top-down, cross-section map of the flower. It shows you not just how many parts there are, but exactly how they're arranged and connected to each other. The formula and the diagram together give a complete, universal description that any botanist anywhere in the world can look at and understand. Which really brings us to a final thought. A plant's morphology, its roots, its stem, its leaves, its flowers, it's not just a random jumble of parts. It's a story. That floral formula tells a story about its family history. Its type of root tells a story about how it survives a drought. The shape of its leaf tells a story about the kind of sunlight it grew up with. A plant's structure is its own autobiography, written in the beautiful language of biology.